on Wednesdays. It's a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And that means Dave Weinberg joins the show via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. First speech day of 2021 is in the books.
It was definitely warm enough for it. I noticed that, that's for sure. Even though apparently it's much colder in this building than it has been outside for the last week. But I digress for whatever reason. So, Dave.
They pumped up the AC, I guess, huh?
They pumped something up. I don't know what it is. I think it's more than the AC. But either way, I came prepared at least. So, Dave, tomorrow NFL draft. We're finally getting to the draft. We're finally done. Well, at least we're almost. We got 24 hours left with all the shenanigans and all the smoke screens and everything. What is the one thing you are looking forward to most about the draft finally being here?
That it's almost over. I've never seen an event that draws so much hype for something that, quite frankly, I don't get the overwhelming interest in it. I mean, people actually have draft day parties, and it's just they're picking players whether you like it or not, or whether you're celebrating or not. I don't get. But it's morphed into this national phenomenon, and they credit the NFL for figuring out a way how to make something that's so boring something exciting to at least the fans, I guess. But I'll be grateful when it's over, to be quite honest with you.
Well, you still got to get through it. So the Eagles are currently sitting at 12th overall. I think that the trade today, I said earlier, was very interesting. Teddy Bridgewater to the Broncos, because to me that opened up the possibility that picks 4 through 9 are all open. They're all open for trades, basically. They're all open season for somebody to consider moving up or moving down or doing something. So if I'm the Eagles, I got to be watching that draft board very closely, because I want to see how this board plays out, because if I have a chance, if I have to trade up and go get somebody, you might have to, because it's now all hands on deck when it comes to 4 through 9 to me.
Yeah, because it looks like the Dolphins and the Broncos, neither of them are going to take a quarterback,
right,
which means that there's going to be a position player dropping. And so, yeah, if the Eagles have their eyes set on Patrick Surtain or Jalen Waddle or somebody of that ilk, then and they think that they have to go up and get them, then they're going to have to do that, which makes it kind of interesting that they had their options open at number 6 and decided to trade that away. And now the interesting scenario is they could find themselves back in the top 10 again.
What do you think the Eagles' priorities are? You've covered this team for a long time, Dave, so you understand this team does not think like the rest of the league. So how do you think their prioritization is going? There's a lot of people who are wondering, does the team just throw their hands up in the air and say, you know what, we're going to go safe, we're just going to go an offensive lineman? I mean, it's always a possibility.
Yeah, it is, and you can never go wrong there, I guess. I mean, they do have some issues up there with Brandon Brooks coming off some injuries. Lane Johnson, same thing. Jason Kelsey's not getting any younger. So, they could do worse than taking an offensive lineman. And personally, though, as we've mentioned, you and I have talked about, ad nauseum, it seems like I really think that secondary is where they need to go. I was starting to maybe gravitate a little bit towards wide receiver, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more they need Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, somebody like that, to solidify that cornerback spot opposite Darius Slay. I think that's the main priority.
Yeah, and the thing with the wide receiver is, to me, Dave, I look at this draft, I feel like you can find wide receivers later in the draft. It's not like this is a draft where it's top-heavy. And to me, I look at last year's draft, the top 3 receivers weren't the most productive last year. Jefferson, T. Higgins, they were not the top 3 receivers. So I think that this might be a trend going on in the NFL. We're seeing more and more that the guy who's not picked first, second, or third is always the best receiver from that draft class.
That could be, although I don't think this year's draft class is quite that deep as far as star potential. I think there are some good wide receivers, like you said, you could get in the second and third round. But I think there's a real drop off after Jamar Chase. I think he's far and away the best wide receiver,
sure,
at least potentially in this class. Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle are both talented. Each kind of, I don't want to say limited, but I don't know if they have the overall package that Jamar Chase presents. So, but you couldn't go wrong with either one of those guys either, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard people say that they don't know if Devonta Smith can be a pure X receiver, a guy who creates separation consistently. And to me, there's one guy in this draft who's not named Jamar Chase who gained separation consistently because he was going against double and triple teams. And I'd love to see him in the Eagles uniform. That's Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. I feel like that's a guy, you want a guy who gets the ball. That's a guy who gets the ball. I feel like that's what this offense is missing because outside of those few games that Travis Fulgham was out there, they didn't really have a guy that really attacked the ball when it was thrown to him.
That's true. Although they drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to do that, play that role, and hasn't worked out so good. And he was a second-round pick, by the way. So, maybe they can get it right this time. Maybe they can go get a guy that can go get the ball in the second or third round and really help themselves.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Extra Point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, sticking also with the drafts, I'm curious what you think about, all this hoopla about the quarterbacks every single year. It feels like, people talk so much about quarterback, but people forget that in the last 10 years, and I couldn't believe this stat when it first came out. I had to go double check it. There's only been one first-round quarterback who started in the Super Bowl in the last 10 years. That's Pat Mahomes. So, what are we doing drafting all these quarterbacks so high then? It's like if the quarterback position is supposed to be so coveted, but yet only one guy got to the Super Bowl as a starter outside of Mahomes and Goff, all right, well, what do we do then? What do we do with the quarterback position?
Well, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's true. But it seems like the teams that are drafting quarterbacks really high are the teams that sucked the year before, and they're probably 2, 3, 4 years away from turning their franchise around. So I think they take quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, for example. I think they're taking him with the idea that they can build around him and maybe make a Super Bowl run in 2023, 2024, or something like that. They need more parts. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's there is the theory, though, you want your franchise quarterback to be able to step in and carry that team on his shoulders right away. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen too often.
Dave, one of the arguments we've been having lately is about the concept of drafting best player available versus need. Where do you stand on that concept?
I'm of the opinion, though, that I think you have to address your need. Like you say with the Eagles, for example, they have needs at almost up and down the board, across the line and secondary, everything. But so I think you draft the best player at that. But say you're targeting corner, then draft the best corner, or a wide receiver, draft the best wide receiver. But you don't. I think it's kind of a reach if you see like an edge rusher who you view as better than the best corner or wide receiver. I think that's a mistake. I think that's when you reach and you get yourself in trouble. I think it's great to have like the best guy, but I think you should just focus on the position that you need the most and focus on the best guy at that position.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, aside from being a longtime Eagles writer and reporter, you also have a passion for baseball, and I want to open the door for you right here. You tweeted about Madison Bumgarner the other day, so go for it.
That's a no-hitter, plain and simple. He didn't make the rules. Major League Baseball established doubleheaders as 7-inning games, which means they're official games. They didn't get shortened for rain. They didn't get shortened for snow, what have you. It's a 7-inning game, and he fulfilled his obligation by pitching all 7 innings and not allowing a hit. So, in my view, that's a no-hitter.
Why do you think baseball is just so ridiculous when it comes to this stuff? I just don't understand. Like, you made the rule. Now you're saying, no, it doesn't count. Like, it's almost like baseball is trying to be like, well, no, we don't want to corrupt our rule book. And it's like, if you cared about the rule book so much, you would have done a lot of things over the last 30 years.
Yeah, like you're counting it as a shutout, but you're not counting it as a no-hitter. What's the freaking difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah, I don't understand a lot of things they do. It just seems like they're making up stuff as they go along sometimes. And I'm always amazed and befuddled by some of the stuff that they come up with at the last minute, it seems like.
I mean, if they cared so much about the 7-inning no-hitter, they should have just made it back to 9 innings. I mean, I thought the 7-inning thing was for last year anyway. I mean, I feel like
I'm with you.
I feel like baseball is baseball because they have a certain set of rules, right? They have a certain set of, the mound is this distance, home plate to first base is this distance. you wear this uniform on the road, you wear that uniform at home. Like baseball has all these very specific things, and now all of a
Manager has to
sudden,
dress like a player for some reason.
which has given us some very indelible images of the managers over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you have all these things, but yet all of a sudden it's, oh, by the way, we're gonna have 7-inning doubleheaders and a guy starting second base to start the 10th inning. Like I just don't understand. Like why are they so obsessed with changing the things that make baseball baseball?
Yeah, I guess it's all about shortening the games, but what's the difference between 7 inning and 9 innings? 20 minutes, maybe. I mean, that makes no sense to me. The starting the guy on second, it just smacks of beer league softball to me. It's just a gimmick that really makes no sense. I mean, are they late for happy hour or something? I don't get the purpose of that at all.
The only rule change that's been proposed, which they didn't impose because baseball is baseball, that I would have been okay with is a pitch clock. Having a clock up there saying, maybe like, I don't know how many seconds you want to make it. I don't really care. But to me, there should be some sort of thing, put it right behind over the catcher's shoulder. So we can just be like, pitcher looks in, the catcher looks at the clock, looks in the pitcher, look at the clock. To me, if you want to do anything but to speed up the game,
right,
that's what you do. You don't sit there and be like, 7-inning doubleheaders.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to see it, but the Bridgeton Invitational Tournament, which at one time was one of the biggest so-called amateur tournaments in the country. I mean, you had guys coming in from all over the East Coast to play for teams, and they're the ones who pretty much established ways to shorten game, as is pitch clock, as in so many warm-up tosses, so many the batter only has so much time to get back into the box. They did a great job with some of their innovations, and Major League Baseball would do well to maybe formulate that. Like the pitch clock is a great idea, and I really don't need to see Bryce Harper readjust his batting gloves after every pitch. Did they get loose when you took ball 2? Really? Can you just stand back in the box, stop tapping the plate 17 times, and just get ready to hit?
It reminds me of Nomar Garcia Para with his exorbitant routine.
I mean, I understand
pitch.
People have their idiosyncrasies. I do too. But I mean, enough's enough already.
Yeah, I feel like baseball just is missing the point. And at the end of the day, we have a league where the best players in the game right now are on the West Coast, and that's nobody's fault. Okay, Trout's with the Angels, Mookie Betts is with the Dodgers, Fernando Tatis Jr. is with the Padres. I get it, but you know what? You got to promote those guys, Dave. You're so worried. You're so worried about the game and the health of the game. There's things you can do. Like when I was a kid, which wasn't exactly that long ago, but still, I'm 35, 36 years old. When I used to go to the game, there'd be billboards. What was on the billboards? It was of the players, right? When you see a commercial for the Phillies, it was of the players. Now I see a commercial or a billboard or whatever, it's of the fans at the games. And it's like, baseball totally forgot to promote their players, and I feel like if they care so much about the health of the game, there are things you can do that are not taking a no-hitter away from Madison Bumgarner.
That's true. Yeah, they need to definitely reevaluate some of the things that they do. Yeah, you're right. They don't market their players nearly enough, and you're right. Most of the best guys are on the West Coast, but that's just the way the breaks of the game are. Not everybody can play for the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Phillies or the Mets or the Nationals or what have you. Every team's gonna have their stars, and you would do well to find a way to make those guys more popular throughout the country, not just in California or Arizona or where have you.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, I want to flip over to a boxing question for you. You've covered boxing for a long time. What is your take on the Paul brothers and they're using basically the boxing world as a platform to promote themselves? What is your take on them and their, to me, I call it a fiasco.
You call it what? I'm sorry.
I call it a fiasco.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I understand that because boxing is such an individual sport, it's left to the boxers a lot of times to promote themselves and to create a certain image or a certain brand, what have you. But the bottom line is it is a sport. I think that should fall on the promoters and the networks to take care of that kind of stuff and let the fighters fight. Well, speaking of boxing real quick, Millville's Thomas Lamana is fighting for the world title on Saturday night on Fox. against Erislandy Lara out in California. So it'll be people want to tune in. It's on free TV, so make sure you turn in to see if Cornflake can become a world champion.
Now, you said that regular Fox or FS1?
Yep, regular Fox.
Okay. We always got to delineate that for the folks out there.
Sure. Yeah,
you know,
I got you.
Yeah,
it's not there is a pay-per-view fight, but it's not that one, so you're good.
Okay, well, yeah, save people a little unnecessary money because half the time, no offense to boxing, but the way it's turned into now, you pay for the pay-per-view and you're sitting around for half your life wondering if you're actually going to watch a fight because they have so many things they got to fill the time with when it comes to commercials and stuff.
And quite honestly, there aren't that many fighters there that are pay-per-view worthy fighters.
Right.
I mean, aside from Canelo Alvarez, I can't think of another one really. Maybe Tyson Fury, but it's time for the networks have done a pretty good job. Showtime, ESPN, Fox, they've done a pretty good job of putting some good fighters on there. But the promoters have to realize not everything's worth $49.95 or $79.95 to watch. Like Andre Broner, for example, what's he doing on pay-per-view? I mean, I wouldn't pay 2 cents to see him.
I don't think anybody in the right mind is giving 2 cents to see him, but what do I know? You mentioned Tyson Fury. Is he going to fight Anthony Joshua or what?
I'm starting to wonder. That seems to make the most sense, but as you know, in boxing, things rarely make sense in that kind of in that sport. I would guess eventually, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Assuming everybody can work out their differences and arrange the right promoter, the right pay, what have you, which always seems to be stumbling blocks in these kind of things. But I think the public wants it so much that I think that it'll happen eventually. When, I don't know, though.
Hopefully it happens eventually. I mean, I know Lomachenko is coming back. He's fighting a guy that I've never heard of in my life. And by the time I figured out what the guy's name was, I kind of gave up on trying to look it up. So, But
well, Lomachenko will probably win in the time it takes you to look it up.
Right, exactly. It's just, I mean, listen, I'm not the boxing diehard you are, Dave, but like to me, like there are fighters I think that are worth watching, and I want to see them fight. And to me, I feel like that's how the regular fan feels. They want to see the fighters they want to see fight, and when they're not fighting, there's a part of you that's like, what the heck?
Right. I mean, I understand they can't fight. Well, they could, but they really won't. They won't fight a world title caliber challenger every time out. But you can only fight so many so-called tune-up fights before people start to forget about you. So, I mean, that's the case with Erislandy Lara. I mean, people are viewing Thomas Lamana, rightly or wrongly, as kind of like a tune-up. I'm not so sure how many people are going to watch it, but this is like the third fight in a row for him where he hasn't fought anybody that's that has that big name. So, I mean, Thomas has in our area, but countrywide, worldwide, not so much. So, they have to be willing to step up at least two out of three fights and fight, truly be challenged, truly be tested, and a fight that's actually like a 50-50% outcome as opposed to a so-called tune-up.
He's Dave Weinberg. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check out all of his extra point columns at 973ESPN.com. And, of course, don't forget Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg, the podcast. Always a fun listen. And as all guests, he appeared each Wednesday as he does on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Dave, appreciate the conversation. We'll catch you next week.
Well, thanks a lot, Josh. I appreciate it. Talk to you next week.